My name is Evelyn Carter. I used to be the CEO of a major tech company in Charlotte. I used to think I had everything: career, marriage, and faith in the person beside me. Until one fateful night. When I woke up, I couldn't move. I couldn't open my eyes. But I could hear my husband Colin's voice, whispering right beside my ear. "You should have died in that crash. You make everything worse every day." I couldn't move. But I was alive and I heard every word. And then, a little girl snuck into my room in the middle of the night. She brought with her a teddy bear. And a secret that would change my entire life. Have you ever been betrayed when you were defenseless? Don't forget to like this video, leave a comment if you've ever felt helpless like I did, and subscribe for the next chapters where a tiny voice pulled me back from the dark. It started that night. I still remember the first time I met Colin. He was standing at the back of the auditorium during a seminar on educational technology. His shirt was wrinkled, his tie loose, and his gaze intelligent with a hint of defiance. I was the keynote speaker that day. He was a part-time lecturer whose funding had just been cut from a local college. He came simply because, as he said, I had nothing to lose. I was struck by the way he asked questions. Not because they were brilliant, but because he looked at me like I wasn't some busy CEO, but someone who could change his life. And I did. I brought him into my company, first as an internal advisor, then, thanks to my support, my connections, and more than a few times cleaning up after his mistakes, he rose to COO. I used to proudly introduce him at press conferences. My husband, the man who understands the value of education in the digital age. We were once called the power couple of the Southeast. The first article about our wedding was titled, "The $1 Million CEO and the Man Who Makes Her Smile." I used to believe that. But later I realized, Colin didn't want to build an empire with me. He wanted to replace me. He went from embracing the supporting role to slowly undermining mine. He started correcting me in meetings, suggested I take more time off, then told the press he was the strategic brain behind every success. I didn't fight it. I thought marriage meant sharing. But I was wrong. I wasn't sharing success. I was handing over trust. Colin was skilled at one thing: making others feel important, making them believe no one else could do what he did. And me? I always believed that if you didn't lift up the one you loved, what was the point of love? Turns out, for him, love was a tool. The crash happened on a Thursday afternoon. I was rushing out of the office after hearing that one of our most important AI projects had hit a serious malfunction. Market forecasts predicted a sharp drop in shares if it wasn't fixed quickly. Colin said he had to make an emergency trip to Raleigh to meet a partner. I didn't question it. He'd mastered the art of fake Zoom calls, of auto-generated assistant emails. I used to laugh, thinking he was more tech-savvy than I gave him credit for. I didn't know he never went to Raleigh that day. He went to his private lawyer's office. And it wasn't the first time. It wasn't until much later I learned that while I sat at a red light, while a speeding truck failed to brake and slammed into my passenger's side, Colin was in a conference room less than 20 miles away, discussing how to transfer shares under my name. He knew the majority of the company's assets hadn't been moved into a trust. And he knew that if I died, he would inherit them all by law. The accident happened in broad daylight in front of dozens of witnesses. The truck driver was in shock, thinking he had killed someone. But I didn't die. I suffered a traumatic brain injury. I lost my ability to speak, to move, but I was still there. Colin arrived at the hospital after everyone else. He cried in front of my mother, rested his head beside my bed like a devoted husband. I heard him say to the doctor, "If there's even a 1% chance, I'll wait." Evelyn's a fighter. And I also heard him on the phone right after he stepped out of the room, his voice changing completely. "How much longer until I can access her main account? Don't tell me there's more paperwork. I've waited long enough." I wanted to scream, to throw a punch, to rip off the mask he wore in front of my family. But my body didn't respond. I, who had spoken on stages to thousands, who had led multi-million-dollar negotiations, was now trapped inside my own body. Only my ears worked. And my thoughts, now more chaotic than they'd ever been. Colin kept playing his part perfectly. White roses every week. Accidental brush of the hand whenever nurses passed by. But what he said when we were alone, that chilled me to the bone. If you really loved me, you would left your passwords. I can't keep waiting like this. Honestly, maybe it'd be better if you never woke up. And then, one night, the door creaked open. It wasn't Colin. Not a doctor. A child's voice said, "Are you asleep? It's okay. I'll just sit here with you a while. My name's Ellie." I didn't know it then, but that tiny voice, and the teddy bear she carried, would change everything. Not save me, but save Ellie too. And expose the truth about the man I once called my husband. I used to think silence was the worst thing that could happen to a person, but it's not. The worst is when you hear everything, understand every word, see every shift in someone's eyes, and you're trapped, unable to respond, to cry, to speak, or to leave. I was diagnosed with something called locked-in syndrome. My brain was alert aware, but my entire body no longer belonged to me. Every response, my eyes, my voice, my movements, gone. I was a soul trapped in my own shell. At first, I didn't even know what had happened. I remembered driving. A call came in from the office. I reached for the speaker. Then came a screech, like metal on metal, and everything turned black. The first time I woke up, there was no light, no sensation, only the steady beep of a heart monitor beside my ear. Tried moving a finger, nothing. Tried to speak, my throat was hollow. Tried to cry, but no tears would fall. Wanted to ask, am I alive? The answer came from my mother's voice, sobbing at my bedside. "Evelyn, it's Mom. Can you hear me? Just give me a sign, sweetheart." I wanted to scream, "I'm here, Mom. I'm alive." But all I could do was wait. A few days later, Colin showed up. I recognized his cologne before I heard his voice. Still the same scent. Cold, meticulous, calculated, like everything he built around himself. "Hey babe, it's me. You're strong. You'll get through this." I heard the chair slide, felt his hand brush against my hair. "Nurses say you still respond to sound. I know you're still in there." And I cried. I wanted to believe, even a little, that a part of him still cared. Until the fourth night after the crash, I heard him talking to a young nurse, sighing as if it were accidental. "She didn't leave any passwords, no contingency plans at all. It's like she wants to take me down with her." The nurse sounded hesitant. I thought she was the type who planned everything. She was, when she was still in control. But now, look at this. Piles of paperwork, frozen accounts, even this care suite. It's costing over $1,000 a day. I'm literally paying to keep someone alive who might never wake up. He gave a soft laugh, the kind that made no sound. I used to know that laugh. It always appeared when he believed he was winning. And it's not like it's my fault. It was an accident, just should have ended cleaner. I wanted to scream, every nerve in me strained, but not a single muscle moved. Colin didn't want me to get better. He wanted me not to wake up. He wanted to turn me into a memory, a sympathetic headline for the press, a tragic past to justify keeping his position at the company. To him, I was now just a shadow in his way. I listened to everything he said in the days that followed. No sweetness, no tenderness, only cold calculations. I need full access to the assets. The lawyer said if she doesn't wake up after 6 months, I can apply for legal guardianship. I want closure for both of us. Closure? I wanted to ask, for whom? I didn't want to die. I was still here. I just couldn't speak. I could still hear my mother crying, still heard the doctors talk about hope, still remembered every slogan I'd written for our very first branding campaign. I hadn't lost my mind. I had simply trusted the wrong person. And that person was now making sure I would never come back. In my darkness, I began to think. If I was still alive, I had to outlast his patience. I didn't know when, I didn't know how. but I wouldn't stay silent forever. Someone would hear me. And then, on a night that seemed no different than the ones before, another voice filled the room. Soft, childlike, strangely sincere. Are you asleep? That's okay. I'll just sit here with you a bit. I skipped my shot today. Don't tell, okay? I didn't know her name yet, but every word she whispered sank deeper into me than anything Colin had ever said. And I didn't know it yet, but that little girl, the one no one noticed, would be the one to free me from the prison Colin built. I used to believe the world out there would save me, a brilliant doctor, a loyal investor, someone on the board who still believed in what I had built. But on one quiet night like all the others, the person who walked in was a child. I didn't hear the door open, only the soft shuffle of rubber soles across tile, then a small, raspy voice, completely unafraid. Are you asleep? That's okay, I won't bother you. I just needed a quiet place. I guessed she was about 8 years old. Her voice was young, but there was something self-reliant about it, as if she was used to being ignored, as if talking to herself was something she did every night. I felt her climb into the chair beside my bed, heard the soft rustle of fabric as she placed something on the blanket, then a quiet sigh. In the pediatric ward, they keep telling me to sleep, but I can't. Every time I close my eyes, I see the old room and the fighting so loud. It's quieter here. I wanted to turn my head to see the small face that belonged to that voice, but I couldn't. All I had was her voice. Those whispers that felt like they were meant for no one, yet pierced through every layer of silence I'd been buried in for weeks. My name's Ellie. They say my mom's not coming back. But Dr. Mason says maybe she just mixed up the dates. Her voice trembled a little on the words maybe, like even she didn't believe it, but was still clinging to the last thread of hope. I heard her rustling through her coat pocket, a soft swish, then something plush placed near my hand. This is Charlie Bear. My therapist gave him to me to help record my feelings, like a singing diary, but I think you need him more. I don't have anything left to say. She paused, then whispered softly into the pillow. I think you're still in there. Everyone says you don't know anything, but I think you're waiting for the right person to talk to. I don't know why, but my throat tightened. If I could cry, I would have sobbed like a child, not because Ellie pitied me, but because she saw me. In a world that had turned its face away, she saw me. That night, Ellie stayed beside me for nearly half an hour. She didn't talk much, just little things. About a nurse named Lucy who gave her leftover pudding, about a roommate named Max who yelled in his sleep. But she didn't leave right away. She stayed until her eyelids began to droop, then quietly climbed down from the chair. Before leaving, she leaned in close to my ear. If you need someone to listen, Charlie can record for you. Just think it in your head. I believe it'll get there. Then she slipped out the way she came in, light as a breath. I don't know how she got in, why no one noticed, why no one stopped her. But I knew one thing for certain. It wasn't random. Charlie, the teddy bear she left, had a tiny button on its stomach. I heard a soft beep, then Ellie's recorded voice. Today, Dr. Mason said we shouldn't hide our feelings, but if we don't want to say them out loud, we can whisper to the bear. Charlie will keep them safe. But I want Miss Evelyn to keep him instead. She needs Charlie more than me, because she's been quiet for a long time. She said my name. I was a person, and someone still believed I was here, alive, still worthy of being called by name. That night I couldn't sleep. My body was still, but my mind raced. I remembered those early years building the company, the nights writing proposals until dawn, and the voice in my head that used to say, if even one person believes in you, that's enough to keep going. Ellie believed. The next day she came back, same soft voice like wind brushing against the window. Today the doctor said I have something called attachment disorder. Sounds like a big deal, huh? But I don't think it's that big. I just don't like when people disappear. She paused for a while, then sighed. So if you don't disappear, I'll come back every day. You don't have to answer. I just need someone to sit with. I heard her place something else on the table, a piece of cookie, a handkerchief with a sun embroidered on it. No one had done anything like that for me in all this time. Not Colin, not friends, not the board. Only a little girl I didn't know, with a teddy bear and a bruised heart. Willing to share half her world with a stranger, expecting nothing in return. And then, something flickered inside me. Not quite hope, but movement. A faint twitch, barely there, in my left pinky finger. I didn't know if it was a reflex or a part of me trying to respond, but I knew one thing. I was no longer alone. And Ellie, just a child, had done something the entire outside world could not. She made me want to come back. Not for revenge, but to live. I don't remember exactly which night it was. In a stretch of days marked only by the beeping of monitors and the dull yellow ceiling light, time had blurred, but I remembered that night's story clearly. Ellie's voice was softer than usual, hesitant, as if even she wasn't sure she should say it out loud. I used to have a mom. She paused, the teddy bear playing its usual soft lullaby, a wordless tune Ellie turned on every night. But my mom left me in the hospital lobby. They said she was probably too young, too scared. Her voice wasn't angry, just calm, and that calmness twisted something deep in my chest. Dr. Mason says my mom wasn't bad, just no one taught her how to love. I felt my whole body drawn to that voice. And then, something happened. The pinky finger on my left hand, where Ellie always placed the bear, twitched. Not strongly, but enough for me to know I hadn't imagined it. I had never been so grateful for my body. That tiny movement was the first thing I had controlled after weeks in darkness. Ellie didn't notice. She kept talking, telling stories about her early days in the group home, about the first time she got to eat chocolate that didn't come from a vending machine. But I knew. I had responded. The next morning, something strange happened. Dr. Mason came in with the head nurse holding a thin file. Usually reserved and hard to read, his voice that day sounded different. Gentler, more personal. "Good morning, Evelyn, it's raining outside today. But I think you might like the sound of it." I listened to the soft tapping of raindrops outside the window. There was something real in the way he spoke. Not small talk, but like he believed I could actually hear him. "Last night, a nurse noticed a small change in your left arm's muscle response. It might be reflexive, but I don't want to ignore it." He stepped closer, speaking with calm precision. "If you're still here, and I believe you are, try to help me, okay? I'm going to ask a question. If the answer is yes, try to move your left pinky." My heart raced. This was my chance. My first chance to prove I was still here. "Evelyn, my name is Mason. I'm standing to your left. Can you hear me?" I focused everything I had into that hand, imagined the pinky brushing Charlie's fur, stretching, moving. A soft beep came from the reflex monitor. Mason flinched. He looked at the nurse, then leaned closer. "Did you just respond? Try again, one more time." I did. This time more clearly. A small twitch, but real. The nurse covered her mouth, nearly in tears. Mason said nothing. He simply placed a firm hand on my shoulder, as if we had just signed a silent agreement. "I knew it, Evelyn. You're still here. And from now on, we're going to talk every day." I can't describe what that moment felt like. It was like someone had shone a tiny light into the darkest corner. Not blinding, not loud, but enough to let me know I wasn't invisible anymore. That evening, Ellie returned. Still the same small frame, her shadow stretching across the door. "I heard the doctor say you moved. Really? Are you trying?" She placed the bear on my hand like always, then tucked her head into the side of the chair. "Want to hear about Max tonight? He screamed in his sleep and woke the whole room up. Then he started laughing. Some people are so weird. Sad and funny at the same time." She paused, then whispered, "But I like people like you better. You don't make noise, you listen, and you're not scary." I tried moving my finger again. This time Ellie saw it. You did that, right?" she whispered, as if afraid I might get tired. If you understand me, do it again. Move once more. I summoned every bit of strength. The pinky twitched. Just slightly. Ellie giggled, then covered her mouth with both hands like she didn't want anyone to hear. I knew it. I knew you weren't sleeping. Then she leaned in closer. So, can I tell you a secret? I couldn't speak, but something inside me opened. Like a dusty door that finally creaked after years of silence, Ellie whispered. I'm not scared of you anymore. I think, if you want, I could be your daughter. Not now, but maybe someday, if you want that. I wanted to cry, but this time not from pain, because something in me felt alive again. A child who had been abandoned. A woman who had been discarded. We, two souls who thought the world had forgotten us, had found each other through the smallest things. A touch. A silent nod. A story whispered with all the heart in the world. And for the first time since the crash, I didn't think about Colin. I didn't think about betrayal, or assets, or the CEO chair. I thought about Ellie, and about what else I might be able to move next. Because now, I had a reason to come back. A very small reason, but a very real one. I had slowly begun to recognize footsteps, the way someone walked, breathed, even the sound of fabric brushing. Each told me who was about to enter. That night, I knew it was Colin. Not from cologne or a familiar greeting, but from the sudden chill in the air. He said nothing to the nurse outside, brought no flowers, didn't even bother to fake a smile. The door closed softly, so quiet I could have mistaken it for a breeze. Then the chair dragged harshly, his footsteps nearing, stopping at the edge of the bed. His voice was low, stripped of any mask. I've waited long enough. Every cell in my body recoiled. The cold didn't come from fear, but from knowing this was it. When he would reveal who he really was. No more performance. No more fake pity. The board is starting to waver. The longer you lie here, the easier it is to convince them. Just a few more signatures. I'll transfer everything, and then it's over. He exhaled slowly, deeply, as if a weight had been lifted. You're not coming back, and honestly, I don't want you to. I didn't know when Ellie had crawled under the bed. Maybe she'd been there all along. Maybe she'd only meant to drop off Charlie and hide like she usually did. But that night, she didn't leave. And Charlie, the little bear with a recorder in its belly, was still running. Colin had no idea. You think I'm going to sit around forever? You left no passwords, no instructions. You didn't think about me. You always had to control everything, even while lying here like this. He laughed, but it wasn't the laugh of the man I used to love. In fact, that crash came at the perfect time. I didn't cause it, but I sure don't regret it. You always made me feel small, and now look who's lying here, can't move, can't speak. It's you, Evelyn. It's you. I felt my heart beat slow. Not from sadness, but from rage. A kind of emotion I hadn't touched in a very long time. I thought about all the times I took him to meet investors. All the times I cleaned up his mess when he miscalculated. All the times I let him take credit because I wanted to keep the marriage steady. And now, all that remained was venom and contempt. Then his voice dropped, colder, more ruthless. Mel, more weak. I'll tell them there's no hope. I've met with the attorney. I have grounds to request termination of life support. I wanted to scream, to kick the bed apart, grab him by the collar and yell, I'm alive. But I couldn't move. All I knew was, someone had to hear this. And then I heard a faint sound, a soft beep from the recording device, signaling the end of the capture. Ellie had recorded everything. Colin stood there a moment longer, unaware that the teddy bear on the bedside, the seemingly harmless toy, had just become the evidence that could destroy him. Shame you can't hear any of this, but if you can, I hope you know, I won't be apologizing. He turned away, shoving the chair so hard the metal legs scraped a long line across the floor. When the door clicked shut, the room fell silent. But not for long. I heard quick, shallow breaths. Then a tiny hand, trembling, touched mine. Ugh. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to eavesdrop, I got scared. Ellie pulled the bear close, holding it tightly in both arms. I recorded it, all of it. You don't have to be afraid. I'll tell Dr. Mason, I promise. Her voice shook, but it was steady. No longer the voice of a quiet child seeking peace. It was the voice of a witness, a protector. I didn't know where Ellie found that courage, but that night she did something no adult had dared do in all these weeks. She listened, she remembered, and she acted. In a world that had turned away, I was finally seen, and Colin, with all his venomous words once buried in silence, had now dragged himself into the light he feared most. The truth. The next morning, my room was no longer the quiet place it used to be. I heard footsteps, fast, firm, not a nurse's pace. Then the door opened and closed gently. Papers rustled. And Ellie's voice, soft as a breath but tight with nerves, spoke. Doctor, I need to give you this. A pause. Then Dr. Mason's voice. What is it? A teddy bear. But there's a recorder inside. Her voice wavered slightly but stayed firm. Last night, I snuck into Miss Evelyn's room, and I heard Mr. Collins say really bad things. I got scared, so I didn't move. But the bear recorded everything. Mason didn't speak at first. I thought he might doubt her, but he didn't. I heard him lean down, inspect the bear, then the sound of a button press, and the recording played. Colin's voice echoed, sharp and unmistakable. I've waited long enough, the board's almost ready. You're not coming back, and honestly, I don't want you to. I'm going to request termination of life support. I have the legal right. Silence. Then Mason exhaled softly. He didn't speak for a long time. Then I heard the chair slide, the beep of a phone, and his voice, now colder than ever. Call Margaret Reed, right now. Tell her to come to the hospital. She needs to hear this. Margaret had been my attorney since the earliest days of my startup. A brilliant, quiet, and fiercely principled woman. When she walked into my room that afternoon, I felt the energy in the air shift. There were no medical questions. Only preparation. A plan. You're certain? Margaret's voice was low and sharp, directed at Mason. I'm 100%. The voice matches all previous recordings, and Ellie is a direct witness. Good. Margaret's reply was crisp. Then I heard papers being flipped, a laptop powering up. I'm filing for a court injunction to freeze all assets tied to Evelyn, including the ones Colin's been trying to move overseas. And we go to the police? Mason asked. I'll hand-deliver the recording to Charlotte PD tonight, but it has to stay confidential. If Colin senses anything, he'll disappear. The room went silent for a moment. I felt a cold chill along my spine, not from fear of Colin, but from the realization that after everything I'd endured in silence, someone was finally fighting for me. Ellie sat close by. Her voice turned quiet again. I'll testify. Margaret turned to her. Are you sure? I remember everything. He was really close. I was right under the bed. The bear was on top, so it caught it all. Margaret asked no more questions. I heard fast typing on the keyboard, then the printer running non-stop. Legal documents were coming to life, page by page. Mason stayed beside me, his voice, for the first time since that day, softened. Evelyn, if you can hear me, don't worry. You don't have to fight alone anymore. He paused, then spoke like he was making a vow. From now on, I'll be your voice, until you can speak for yourself again. In less than 24 hours, the court approved an emergency asset freeze. Every account in my name, every trust, every share in the company, even the ones under Colin's name, were locked. His personal attorney was notified, and Colin vanished, just as Margaret predicted. Mason stored the recording on an encrypted hard drive, locked in the hospital's safe in case anything happened. And Ellie came back every night, but this time she brought a notebook, sketching everything she saw so that if anyone asks later, I can show them. I still couldn't hold her hand, but whenever she leaned against the bed frame, I tried to move just a bit more. A small twitch in my hand, a flicker in my eyelids. And every time, Ellie noticed. You're coming back to me, aren't you? I couldn't say yes, but my heart, though still weak, had a clear rhythm now. Yes, I'm coming back. Not to reclaim everything I lost, but to protect the one thing I still had. The first light I saw wasn't the blinding kind people talk about. It was soft, hazy, like it passed through a layer of mist. I didn't know how long it took me to realize my eyes were open, that my lashes, once stiff from silence, were moving because I told them to. Everything was blurry at first, but one image sharpened more than any other. Ellie. She was sitting beside my bed, both of her small hands wrapped around mine, warm, trembling slightly. You opened your eyes. Her voice cracked as if she couldn't believe it was real. I couldn't speak yet, but I looked her straight in the eyes I had listened to in my mind for countless nights, and blinked once. Ellie burst into tears, but not the kind born from despair. It was the cry of a child who had held back too long out of fear of hoping. I told everyone you were still there. The night shift nurse had just walked in and dropped an entire tray of supplies. What followed was a domino of chaos. The doctor being paged, rushed footsteps, intercom alarms. But it all felt like it was happening behind glass. I focused only on Ellie's hand gripping mine. And then I moved. A small nod. Not a reflex, not from a machine. It was me, saying, "I'm alive," for the first time without words. The next morning, once I could blink 3 times to say yes, just like Mason had taught me, the first message was sent. She's awake. And then, Colin arrived. He walked into the room as if he still owned it. No flowers. No haunted eyes like the first time. Just that look of irritation. Like he resented being summoned. Why was I called here? She's awake for real? Mason stood beside me, calm and measured. "Mr. Cullen Carter, I invited you because there have been major developments in Evelyn Carter's condition, and because you need to witness this." He leaned down, turned to me. "Evelyn, if you recognize this man as Cullen Carter, please blink 3 times. I looked Colin straight in the eyes, and blinked. Once, twice, 3 times. Colin gave a forced chuckle. "Oh, come on, Dr. Mason. Everyone knows facial muscles can twitch. This doesn't prove anything." From behind him, Margaret Reed stepped in. She held a folder and a USB drive. "Thank you for coming, Mr. Carter. Please have a seat. In front of you is an emergency restraining order issued by the Mecklenburg County Court, along with a recorded audio file containing your admission of intent to misappropriate assets and terminate life support without authorization." Colin's face drained of color. You're kidding. A recording of what?" From the doorway, Ellie appeared. Charlie the teddy bear was in her arms. She said nothing, just gently placed the bear on the table. Margaret nodded toward a plainclothes officer nearby. He stepped forward, calm but firm, and reached for his cuffs. "Mr. Colin Carter, you are under arrest for attempted asset fraud and endangering the life of another individual. You have the right to remain silent." Colin flailed. "This is ridiculous. A kid with a teddy bear? That's your evidence?" Margaret said nothing. She simply pressed play, and Colin's voice filled the room, clear down to every breath. When the words, "If she dies, things will be a lot easier for me," played through the speaker, the silence that followed was so deep. I could hear my own heart beat. Colin was taken away shortly after. The weeks that followed were all about recovery, speaking again, swallowing, standing. Then, relearning how to write, and how to say a name. Ellie. Mason supported me every step of the way, but Ellie never left my side. She retold everything like only a child could, simple, vivid, and without skipping a beat. But one afternoon, as I practiced writing my first few words again, Ellie hesitated. "Miss Evelyn, if I tell you something, will you still like me?" I nodded, slow but steady. I'm the daughter of Miss Marissa. She used to work in admin. Mr. Colin fired her, said it was her fault, but it wasn't. She looked up, her eyes full of memories. My mom got really sad after that. She left me at the clinic. I'm not mad at her. I just wanted you to know. I couldn't hold back my tears. Marissa, she'd been a kind, hard-working woman. She used to bring coffee for the whole floor without being asked. I once asked her why she always smiled. She said, "Because I still have work to do." And now her daughter was the one who had saved me. I squeezed Ellie's hand, then looked straight at Mason, then Margaret. I want to be this child's mother, not because I owe her, but because I need her, the way she once needed me. "I don't want you to go back to being a boss or anything," Ellie whispered. "I just want you to be my home." I nodded, slow and certain, like I was signing the beginning of a new life, a new role, a new kind of existence without titles, without shares. When the final court hearing ended, when my name was cleared from the tabloids, I knew it was time to leave the stage. I didn't give a grand farewell, no press release, just a short email to the board. "I'm stepping down from operations, remaining a silent shareholder. Please don't call me back. I found another life." And I did. On a small hillside outside Asheville, in a sloped-roofed cabin rebuilt from an old farm, with a porch wide enough for 2 people to read books in the afternoon and a kitchen warm enough to bake cookies. Even if Ellie never followed the recipe. We moved in at the start of fall. Yellow leaves covered the dirt path leading up the hill, and Ellie squealed when she saw the wooden swing hanging between 2 oak trees. "Mom, it's like in a fairy tale." It was the first time she called me Mom without hesitation. At first, I still needed crutches. Some muscles were weak, my left hand still trembled slightly during fine tasks. But I wasn't in a hospital anymore. There were no beeping machines by my ear. Only Ellie's voice reading books, the wind rustling through pine trees, and Mason's even tone every Monday afternoon. "How are you feeling? Sleeping better?" He kept his habit of knocking 3 times on the doorframe before entering, like asking permission with a rhythm. At first, Mason came for medical reasons, checking therapy progress, guiding physical recovery, measuring neural response. But soon he started bringing hot coffee from a tiny cafe down the street, a cinnamon roll, sometimes old books about gardening, because I once said I wanted to plant herbs on the porch. Ellie liked him. She didn't say much, but every time Mason visited, she drew pictures. And in those pictures were always 3 people. Me, Ellie, and a man with silver-rimmed glasses I recognized instantly. One evening, while Mason packed up his medical kit, Ellie whispered softly, "If Dr. Mason stayed here forever, I think the house would feel happier." There was nothing left to say. But that night I brewed 2 cups of tea instead of 1, and I left the kitchen door slightly ajar, listening to his footsteps linger longer than usual. A year passed, not quickly, but gently. I learned to live slower. Mornings started with folding Ellie's blanket and making coffee while she did online school. I taught her how to weed, how to tell basil from mint. She taught me how to make birthday cards from cookie boxes. I forgot I once stood on stages talking to investment firms. Now, I only wanted to hear Ellie tell stories about Max, the classmate who mimicked owl sounds during One early summer afternoon, when lavender bloomed across the backyard, I received a call from the Buncombe County Courthouse. The clerk's voice was soft but firm. "Congratulations, the judge has signed the order. Ellie is now legally your daughter, Ms. Evelyn Carter." That night I took the wooden frame I'd kept for months, slipped the court document inside. When I handed it to Ellie, she touched it with both hands, then looked up. "So now you can't leave me, right?" I held her tightly. "I never planned to leave you. Even before I knew you, my heart already had a place for you." Mason came the next afternoon carrying a bouquet of wildflowers in a glass jar and a small cake with frosting words, "Family is where we choose." I raised an eyebrow. "Who wrote that?" "Ellie did. I'm just the delivery guy." We ate the cake right on the porch, sitting on 2 rickety wooden chairs that Ellie said prove you're alive when they creak. The breeze swept through my hair, the coffee cooled fast, and I sat there between a patient man, a once-lost child, and myself, the woman who thought she had lost everything. No more reports to file, no more boards to brief, no need for speeches. I only needed to know. I was living for love, not to prove anything. And that had never been easy, but it had never been so worth it. Sometimes people ask me, "Do you miss your old life, the brilliant career, the admiration?" I smile, because I know what I have now can't be measured in shares or deals. I once lost everything: reputation, health, freedom, even my faith in people. But, from a tiny voice in the dark, from an old teddy bear, from a girl who'd never been called daughter, I learned how to live again, how to love, how to forgive. Maybe you've gone through something like that too. Not a car crash, but a loss, a betrayal, or simply a time when the world stopped listening to you. So if someone, even just one person, believes you're still there, what would you do with that second chance? I'd love to know, would you forgive or would you walk away? Do you believe in rising from ruins, like I believed in Ellie? Share your thoughts below. I read every word, and who knows, maybe the next story I tell is the one you've been waiting for. If today's story touched a memory or feeling in you, don't forget to follow this channel for more journeys of revival, where love, kindness, and quiet courage still exist in this world. Because sometimes, all we need is a small voice in the dark saying, I believe you're still there,